located on the south side of the large Midwestern college I was attending, is a very old building that was used as a woman's only dorm in the 1930s and 40s. It has gone through many changes over time, but this ornate building hides secrets from the school's past that still reverberate today. The building is no longer a residence hall and houses offices for many departments throughout campus. I had to go there to talk to a professor late one afternoon and made my way into the building up to the third floor. There was definitely a strange vibe about this place. It had a cold, damp feeling, and it was giving me a little bit of the creeps. I usually don't sense things like this, but something about this day and this place had my senses on full alert. When I reached the third floor, I stepped into the hallway and the lights all flickered, and I felt a blast of cold air hit me head on. It nearly rocked me on my feet, but I stabilized myself against a wall, and then the lights stopped flickering. I looked around and there was nobody else to witness what I'd just seen and felt. And for a moment I considered just leaving the building and rescheduling my meeting with my professor for later. But after a few moments, everything seemed to calm down and I started my way down the hall. Then that feeling returned, and I looked at the end of the hall and I saw a strange shape. It was white and seemed to glow, and it floated a few inches above the ground. As I got closer, I could see that it was a woman, and she seemed lost. And I felt a cold breeze surround me this time, starting from my feet and working up to my head, that locked me in place. There was a whispering in the air, and the shape moved closer toward me from the other end of the hall. I couldn't move for several moments, but finally I was able to make my feet work, and I bolted for the stairway. I don't even know if my feet touched the stairs as I ran down 3 flights of stairs and burst back out into the daylight. I stood in the sun and watched people walk as if it was a normal day, but this was no normal day for me. I would later learn that back when the building was a woman's only dorm in the 30s, a student decided to stay over the break all by herself. She was in a sad state, with some saying she was losing her mind. When everybody returned, they found her dead body, and it appeared as she had starved herself to death in the dorm. Some say her spirit roams the hall, looking for a friend or a way out. And maybe that's what I encountered that day. I ended up just doing a phone call with the professor I needed to talk to, and I avoided going back in Oxley Hall for the rest of my college days. I still think about that poor woman's spirit, doomed to roam the halls of this building forever. A large yellow brick building sits on the grassy oval of a large Midwestern university, which is named after physicist Thomas C. Mendenhall. Mendenhall taught at a local high school and was very in demand, and this led to him being the first hire at this school in 1873. I had classes in Mendenhall Laboratory and had to stay late one night to finish up an experiment. It was a long night and I was very tired. The place was fairly empty, and occasionally I would go out into the hall just to stretch and get away from my studies. I went to the water fountain and took a long drink, and then I heard a sound. It was feet shuffling against the floor. Again, I was fairly certain I was the only person in the building at that time of night, and the idea of somebody shuffling around put a chill up my spine. I heard a door open and then squeak shut. Then I heard the shuffling again. and I looked down the hall, and a shape was moving my way. It was shambling toward me. I called out to see who it was, but I got no answer. I backed away slowly as the shape came closer, and finally, I could swear I could see a hint of an expression, and the face of the person looked dead at me. That was the only way I could describe it. I stumbled backwards and I bounced off the wall and then finally turned and ran, about my phone and dialed 911. I just knew I had to get out of that building and I didn't care what happened to my experiment. I ran down the hall and hit the stairwell at a full run. I made it outside with nothing coming after me and wondered what the hell had just happened. Later I would learn that Mendenhall had some pretty crazy ideas that were ahead of their time, and some of them were plain way out there. One of the ideas was about reanimating a human body. He got permission to get the body of a recently deceased prisoner from the Ohio State Penitentiary and run experiments on it. These experiments would be similar to what people saw in the famous Frankenstein movies. A murderer named John Barclay was sentenced to hang to death, and then his body was used for these experiments. Many were appalled and against these experiments, but Mendenhall pressed forward. He brought in what would be modern-day generators of the day and used them to shock the body of the dead prisoner. Reports from the experiment said that the electricity caused the eyes of the dead man to open and the left hand to elevate in the air. And the fingers moved as if grasping for something, and then the hand fell into a resting position. The battery was then applied to the nerves of the face and neck, which caused the muscles of the face to move as if in life. Then the test was run again, next applied to the phrenic nerve on the left arm, then the sciatic nerve. All these experiments caused the body to twitch, and some felt that it was somehow brought back to life. Others disagreed. But of course, the body did not find life again. Once I learned this story, I connected the dots and felt that the person I saw shuffling through the hallways was most likely the body of the prisoner who had been tortured in death by this ambitious physicist. From then on, I didn't pull all-nighters in the lab and never saw that strange shape again. I was going to school at a very large college in the Midwest with a long history. All older schools have their legends, myths, and ghost stories. Many of these are passed from generation to generation, and this is a time where I encountered one of these stories, and it changed my view on the college and in some ways my view of life. Sitting on the south side of the large green oval on the campus that students pass through to get to other buildings is Orton Hall. The building is the second oldest structure on campus. It is a very ornate building with a tower on it that has bells that ring every quarter hour, sending chimes throughout the campus. The exterior of the building is adorned with what looks like gargoyles, but are really ancient creatures from our prehistory. I decided to check out the building while waiting for a friend to get out of class. I wandered the halls and even checked out the museum, which was full of rocks, fossils, and skeletons of long-gone creatures. It made me think of Jurassic Park, but with a whole lot less action. After several minutes, I left the museum and decided to check out the second floor, but something froze me in my tracks. I heard a strange grunt that echoed off the walls. It didn't sound human and made my blood run cold. Some part of my lizard brain was kicked into overdrive by a sense of impending danger. Adrenaline pumped through my body. I saw a shadow down the hall, and it didn't look human, at least not by today's standards. It was stooped and shambled my way. For a moment, I was unsure what to do. I wanted to know what the thing was, but my fear center said that finding out could be very, very bad. Self-preservation took over, which made my legs move. I ran out of the building and onto the oval. After a few minutes, I met up with my friend outside the building, and they must have seen my expression because they asked me what was wrong. I'd stumbled out that I'd had some bad food and wanted to get back to my dorm. They bought this sorry excuse and we left the area. I learned that the building is named after a professor of geology who had been said to work many late nights inside the building working by lamplight. Some say that there are dark patches on the ceiling where the smoke from his lantern caused black marks. Also, some people said that when they were studying late at night, they could hear him bustling around, and then they feel a cold presence in the air. Back in the 1990s, two psychics decided to pay a visit to Orton Hall. They were accompanied by a reporter from the campus paper who wrote that one of the psychics sensed the presence of something ancient, something primal, something from our past. They felt it was a Cro-Magnon man, a caveman. They could hear the grunts of the caveman, and sometimes they could hear the beast bustling around, banging into things, slamming into doors because it didn't understand the world that it was in. The psychics didn't stay in the building very long, leaving the bewildered reporter to wrap up their story. This made me think back to the museum in the building full of ancient creatures from our past. Bones and fossils of a world that may want to reach out to our world.